Hello and welcome to Comms Business Live. I'm Charlotte, editor of Comms Business, and today we will be examining technology evolutions and how these often start in the US. I'm delighted to be joined by Jason Beckett, Vice President of Sales at NetSapiens, who has had an extensive career in telecommunications in the United States. Welcome to the show, Jason.
Welcome, Charlotte. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for joining us. So the US market is the largest consumer of business telecommunications products, and as such, it's often the most competitive. New technologies are often born in the US, with the market hugely influential in deciding the winners and the losers of emerging technological waves. Because it is such a large market, gambling with disruptive technologies is commonplace, and what's more, differentiation has really flourished across the country. Throughout this discussion, we're just going to touch on the kind of different strategies that have allowed telecommunications products to become competitive in a busy US market, and crucially, how to kind of leverage those strategies in your own marketplace, as well as how to just understand waves that are coming and how to take advantage of those. So first up, Jason, can you just talk us through innovations that are happening in the US? And what you're seeing service providers doing to separate themselves from their competition?
Well, great overview, Charlotte. Thank you. So yes, technologies are always changing. It seems to be that they get their start in the United States, as you mentioned. Some of them achieve mass market acceptance. Others of them just end up being niche technologies. And probably the one that everybody is most focused on is cloud computing as a platform.
Mm-hmm.
That started in the U.S. Over a decade ago, and it really was a disruption to try to change the architecture of using mainframe computers to taking applications and deploying them in the cloud in the early days of the internet, and the early adopters of cloud technology had to deal with all kinds of issues like poor internet backbone and different technologies that evolve within the whole cloud computing infrastructure. So it was an interesting journey to watch, because within the cloud computing framework, you had some of the early adopters, and a lot of customers just decided they weren't going to back 100% of their platforms into the cloud, but a lot of them decided that they very much needed to start to deploy technologies onto that platform. So they kind of did a little at a time. Some of them used, some of them would do specific data applications that they would use in the cloud. A lot of customers had a distributed geographical environment, so a cloud made sense. And the other disruption that happened with the cloud is that the economics transitioned from a capital purchase to a subscription purchase. So a customer didn't have to go decide to commit $500,000 to develop a mainframe technology, when for $10,000 a month they could have a cloud infrastructure. So it was a combination of the disruption of the technology and the disruption in the economics that really caused cloud to take off. I remember sitting in a number of webinars and a number of seminars where people were evangelizing cloud technology long before it was going to be an adopted technology. And half of the people in the audience were skeptics, and half of them were advocates. And now you sit in a session now, and you probably have 80% advocates and still have a small segment of skeptics, but it's much less than it was early on. So that's probably the best example I can think of a technology that everybody can relate to.
Mm. And that leads nicely into my next question, because cloud is a great example of this. And when it comes to industry evolutions, companies tend to split into three categories: those early adopters,
right,
the fast followers, and those that just ride the wave. And it sounds
right,
like the people in that seminar you just mentioned fully fit into those three categories.
right.
How can companies kind of figure out the ideal spot for them? And because obviously there's lots of different benefits of being a fast follower versus taking that kind of more conservative approach to kind of see how things go first. What would you say there?
Well, I think it's really in the company's DNA, first of all, to decide where they start. So NetSapiens is a good example. Really started out as an engineering-driven company. We were one of the early adopters in the UCaaS space. By far and away, we weren't the largest. By far and away, we weren't the most sophisticated. We were like any other small company that was kind of bootstrapping their way up. But we kind of had a vision as to what we wanted, where we wanted to go, and how we wanted to get there. So from an early adopter standpoint, we fit nicely in from a cultural standpoint into that. The one distinction and the one thing that I see over here in the U.S. is that there's a lot of venture capital money floating around, what I call stupid money. And so you will find an early adopter company that is trying to develop a technology that really has no sustainability and really ahead of time isn't going to have much of an impact in the market. But somebody comes along and throws 500 million or a ton of money at this company to try to develop that technology, and the companies, the early adopters that are successful, don't look at that. They look at that money as an investment in the future versus just a large check in the bank. So when you look at early adopters that are going to be successful in the market, you need to try to separate those that have stupid money backing them and those that are really technology based. But I think it really starts with the DNA for the early adopters. The second category, the fast followers, those I think have the best chance because you're not risking everything to develop a technology that may or may not be successful in the market. But if you're smart enough to look at the technologies that are in the early adopter phase, then you can see that there's potential for that, and then you decide as a company that you want to do it better. You want to offer some differentiation. You want to offer some uniqueness to the product outside of that of the early adopter. So then you can sort of be there on the front of the curve, and so NetSapiens is sort of become that way after they left the early adopter phase. And there's a number of examples I can give you if you want in terms of the way that we compete against everybody else. But then when it becomes really, really popular, that's when you sort of get into the mass market phase, and that's when everybody jumps in. In the unified communication space right now, it started out where it was a technology that we knew was going to have long-term benefits and long-term value, and then all of a sudden, as you sort of lead the way into that fast follower phase, then all of a sudden you look behind you and there's 100 people trying to do what you're doing, and all they're really trying to do is copy what you've done, and there's not a lot of new ideas. There's not a lot of newness to it. It's really just trying to capture market share. And then what ends up happening after that is then you have a natural fallout because you have a lot of competition in a fairly crowded space. Everybody starts competing for mind share. Everybody starts commoditizing the product. And you're seeing that now in the UCaaS industry where, as far as the customer is concerned, if I'm $1 less than my competitor, that's oftentimes the decision to purchase some technology. But that's kind of a race to the bottom. And so we're fortunate in that we don't play in that commoditization aspect of it. But however, there's a lot of companies out there that do, and you can see that both in the U.S. and in other countries. So that's kind of where we fit and how we fit and how the industry sort of evolves.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it really sounds like that fast follower element is really critical to success because you can take on learnings that are already happening and see what's working and what isn't working. But like you said, you're getting to differentiate before it's too crowded for you to start.
And you got to remember that it's all about profit, right? So an early adopter doesn't care about being profitable. They've got, other people's money. They're spending it to try to develop it. But the fast followers have taken that technology and built a profit model around it. And that's where most companies have that success. And if they're good at building their profit model, then all of a sudden their revenues shoot up, because they've taken an attractive product to the market, and all of a sudden customers are more comfortable. And it's just momentum builds and builds and builds in that fast follower phase.
Definitely. And NetSapiens is currently the fastest growing UCaaS provider in the US. It obviously sounds like that kind of fast follower mindset has been very critical to that. But I just wondered, is there anything else that was kind of part of NetSapiens being able to achieve that?
Well, I always say it's exceptional sales management. That's the line I've always used, but that's not actually 100% accurate. In the U.S. market, it's really kind of interesting because in the UCaaS space, you've got the top tier of product offerings, and that top tier is attractive to the large service provider space, and that's the BroadSoft and Metaswitch and some other selected carriers. And then in the bottom of the market in the UCaaS space, you've got a large pool of open source platforms out there. And open source is a great way to get your toe into the water and learn about the technology and have control over the platform. That the large enterprise providers tend to take the product and give it to you in a form that they want you to consume and at a price model they want you to consume, and they've got a very structured approach, where in the exact opposite end, in the lower end, the open source market is basically the wild west. So there's a lot of product differentiation. There's certain rules that you play in that space, but for the most part, so out of the open source market comes a lot of the technologies advances that end up in the industry. We're kind of unique because we're really only the service provider platform that sits between the large 800-pound gorillas in our space and the real small open source platforms. So what ends up happening is a lot of the service providers that start with an open source platform quickly figure out that there are limitations and there are things that they need to do. They have issues when it comes time to scale. The open source platform really isn't designed from a reliability standpoint. So customers will have issues with that. But all of those are sort of triggers to say we need to figure out what our next step is, and we need to go up market, and NetSapiens is kind of uniquely positioned there. With the larger service providers, what ends up happening is things happen beyond the customer's control. The best example is BroadSoft. BroadSoft was acquired by Cisco. At the time, the BroadSoft community had a great community of service providers. They really had done it. They were in that fast follower phase, and they had really done a great job of that. Cisco came in and decided that they wanted to be able to sort of take control of the BroadSoft environment. And a lot of the BroadSoft customers really did not want to be part of the Cisco structure. They felt that it was too monolithic. They felt that it was too structured. They were concerned that Cisco was going to come in and dictate how they were going to do business. Whereas NetSapiens at that point still had a lot of the BroadSoft look and feel. I mean, we're all about our community. Our main focus is to allow our community to thrive. And so we became very attractive to BroadSoft customers who were nervous about the Cisco effect. And so they came to us and said, we want BroadSoft, but we don't want the Cisco overlords, if you will, telling us what to do. So the combination of going down market from the BroadSoft space and going up market from the open source space is really what resulted in the success that we've enjoyed over the past couple of years. So if that makes sense,
Yeah, definitely. And that open source kind of way that NetSapiens provides its own products has obviously been very vital to being able to differentiate it further to kind of stand out in what could be a crowded market. Are there any kind of particular examples that have stood out for you of how a customer has kind of further changed the NetSapiens product so that it kind of really fits a specific use case?
Yeah, there's actually three. There's actually three different approaches to the go-to-market strategy with NetSapiens. So,
Mm,
but first,
okay.
just so you know, the NetSapiens platform is not open source. It's a Linux-based system.
Oh,
So
okay.
the attractiveness to a lot of customers is that Linux is a very reliable operating system, and when you start to scale into the larger configurations, or reliability of the platform is probably the first thing that people look for. So reliability sort of is first, and then all the technology wrapped around that is what makes the product successful. But that's what leads into the discussion about the three different go-to-market strategies.
Yeah.
So our platform is really designed as a platform that a customer can develop and take to market in any manner that they want. It's really, nobody knows who the NetSapiens platform is. If you come over to the United States and you're looking for a UCaaS solution, you'll find our platform offered by different customers in all kinds of different varieties. So the most basic variety is some of our customers will take our platform, develop a UCaaS product. They take advantage of, taking advantage of the COVID lockdown and the work from home initiative, and they develop a direct to customer model where they go out and they decide that that they just want to go in and sell direct to businesses. The business model allows them to make really good profit margins doing that because it's a direct to consumer model. And our second largest customer in the United States, that's their model. They will take a sales crew, they'll go into a city, they'll blanket the city, they'll go find the opportunities, they'll convince them that the platform is good, and then they pack up and they go to the next city and do the same thing, and it's repeatable time after time after time. And they've had about a 30% growth per year. Simply by using that direct to customer model. And that's the traditional, but that's certainly a model that people can do. Our largest customer has a completely different model. Our largest customer's model is there are a lot of managed service providers out there and a lot of smaller managed service providers that don't have the expertise, don't have the desire, don't have the willingness or the money to bring a UCaaS platform into their customers on their own. So what they do is they partner with our customer in what we call a white label resale model, and that customer can go out, they can brand the platform as their own. They can go sell it to their managed service provider customers. They're not too aggressive in terms of going out and getting new customers. But what they are trying to do is they're trying to prevent others from encroaching on their customer base, and that's a key differentiator. If I've got a customer out there that's a real estate agent or some other law firm or accounting firm or something like that, and I'm currently selling them data services, and I'm getting $500 a month from that customer, that's a pretty good way to earn a living for a lot of these guys. But what they're fearful of is they're fearful of somebody else coming in and offering them telephony services, which will ride on their architecture and their support, and then allow that prospect, that customer to be poached, if you will, by a customer that's offering both a UCaaS solution and all the regular data services that they offer. So this customer goes in and offers them the ability to offer UCaaS without the investment, without anything other than training them on the platform and how it works and how to position it and how much it costs and how to place orders and how to work with the operating companies, for telephone numbers and things like that. And so they've gone out and decided that their best way to grow is to create a large family of smaller MSPs that all operate on that platform, but operate independently, sort of as if it's a franchise model. But it's really not a franchise model because it's customized to whatever they want. So there's certain things that are structured, there's certain things that are not. But to a lot of those smaller MSPs, it's a very attractive model because it keeps others from poaching on their existing customer base. Yeah. So that's kind of the second model, and our largest customer in the United States has done a great job offering the service, and I'm going to say they probably have somewhere between 7,000 to 8,000 small MSPs in the United States that like this model, because that's the nature of their business. They don't want to be, they're not subject matter experts in UCaaS, but they have a partner in our customer who is. And then the third one is so in our space, we've got so many different customers out there and so many different competitors, and they're all trying to find some competitive differentiation. And so one of the things that we've done that we've been very, very successful at is a customer will go out and find a vertical market space that they can uniquely serve, that is not served by by one of the larger providers. And their value add is to go in and provide some product differentiation, go after that specific vertical market, and then once they're in that vertical market, they earn a very good living, because there's nobody else that does it better than what they do, and word of mouth spreads around. So in the U.S. market, traditionally that's sort of been the legal vertical market has been very attractive. Because legal in the legal industry, they're looking for bill back of customers and time reconciliation, and they view time management as a revenue tool, so it's very attractive to do that in the legal industry. But medical practice is another great issue, another great vertical, because within medical you've got HIPAA regulations and concerns, and so everybody wants to make sure that their platform is compliant with the HIPAA laws over here. And so those have been the traditional vertical markets. Even hospitality is a market. Schools. We have a tremendous amount of a tremendous number of schools and educational system, not universities, but just neighborhood elementary schools and middle schools and that. And so by being able to provide product differentiation to that vertical, a customer can differentiate themselves using that. My favorite one, and I'm going to say this without asking permission from my customer to talk about it, but we have a customer who's decided that the vertical market that they want to specialize in is pest control. And you would probably not think that pest control is going to be an area where there would be a lot of opportunities. But in the United States, the pest control industry consists of tens of thousands of individual one-man entrepreneurs who basically spend their day running around, solving rodent and pest problems. They're not technology savvy. They've run their business. They've got one or two trucks. They've got a couple of cell phones. They don't have a full-time person answering the call, or being able to handle leads, and be able to convert them to customers. And so filling the void of those types of customers that don't have access to that technology with a solution specifically built for them that's tied into their CRM. And the way it works, I'm not sure how it works in other countries, but if you're sitting at home and you see a mouse running across the floor, the first thing you do is go on the internet and you search on pest control, and 5 names come up. You call the very first person on the list because you're only focused on the mouse that just ran across the floor. If that person answers the phone and can solve your problem, you never go to the second one. But if you're the first one on the list and you call and it goes to voicemail or there's nobody there, what do? You hang up and you call the second one until you get somebody who can come over and solve the problem that you have. So what they have done is they find a way to capture that initial call, and every call to them is gold. And then they turn around and they develop within our platform an app where they send a link to the customer. The customer clicks on the link, and their phone turns into a camera so that they can actually see what the problem is. And by doing that, all of a sudden the customer's engaged. The customer never calls another pest control person. And so if you're an independent pest control provider, by doing nothing other than by using their platform, your business doubles or triples just because you're not there, to do that. This company does that as a service, and that's made them very, very popular. So
that's a great example of super niche use case with a very compelling offering.
Yeah, and that's just one vertical market. So if you're So what I've always coached all of our customers to do that are interested in a vertical market is to find a vertical market where technology is not serving the customer. And pest control is a classic example of it. Where you've got this large swath of opportunities, and they had to invest energy and time to develop the integration with this customer relation management softwares and all the other technology. But the result is that that they're now a competitive threat to the established, enterprise, pest control companies that are out there, because now all of a sudden the small guy has all of the benefit and all of the value that the large companies do, and captures a greater percentage of market share. But so there's all kinds. So again, in summary, there's really three things. There's the direct model, which is very profitable, but it's a choice that customers make. There's the white label resale model, where people are going out and selling to managed service providers who are not large enough or sophisticated enough to want to do it on their own. And then you've got this huge opportunity within the vertical markets to serve others. And you could do the same thing with plumbers. You can do the same thing with carpenters. You can do the same thing with electricians. All of these verticals come to mind that you can develop a specific, a specific thing for. So that's a long answer to a very simple question.
But those are obviously three very distinct models. I just wondered, are there kind of any elements that you think span across all three that are kind of integral to success? Is it differentiation, or is there something else that kind of ties those together?
Well, probably differentiation is the one common thread, because in a crowded marketplace like we have over here, if you cannot differentiate yourself from anybody else, then you enter the phase where it simply becomes a race to the bottom, and all you're doing is chasing fewer and fewer dollars for customers. So every one of those examples I use, my customers who are successful have found a way to differentiate themselves from everybody else. So, for example, the white label resale model. We have the same major players that you have over in Europe. We have 8x8, Ring Central, all of these, large players. Any one of those customers could resell one of those products. And every one of those customers can make money by reselling their established products and their established services. Where they struggle with over here is, if I'm reselling Ring Central, I'm really competing with the exact same product against Ring Central. So there's no differentiation between what I'm offering, other than me offering it, versus what Ring Central is offering it. So how do you set yourself apart from everybody else? With our platform and with the white label reseller model, you differentiate yourself by designing and developing the feature set that is specific to a particular customer set you want to go after. You can certainly differentiate in pricing. You can add UCaaS features like mobility or collaboration tools, or we also have a very large library of what are called APIs, which are ways to have applications controlling our platform from a third party. So a lot of customers will look to integrate our platform to an existing software platform that they're trying to use, and they'll be able to do that very successfully through our APIs. Those are all things that are differentiators with our platform that may not be available to one of the larger platform providers that really only want you to offer what they offer, but they're looking at it as a channel play, where if I can get 5,000 people reselling what I built, that's 5,000. That's like having 5,000 salespeople on the street, and don't ask any questions, don't ask to modify anything. If we don't meet the customer needs, move on to the next customer. Our attitude has always been a little different. Our attitude has always been, let's find out what the uniqueness needs to be, develop to that uniqueness, and that will set you apart from everybody else. So I guess differentiation is really the one common thread. That and reliability in the platform. Our platform is rock solid. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure a lot of people listening to this will find that a very compelling aspect that they might want to investigate further.
Right.
So that brings us to the end of today's episode. Jason, thanks so much for sharing those insights with us.
Okay, well, happy to help, you know.
Absolutely. And if anyone watching wants to hear more about NetSapiens and what we've discussed today, there are some links in the video description to point you in the right direction. But for now, thanks a lot, Jason, and everyone else, enjoy the rest of your day.
Charles, thank you very much.
Thank you.